Assalamu alaikum. In this session, I will try to review whatever we have studied in the last few weeks, especially the content that we covered during the online learning time. And inshallah, quiz 3 will focus only on whatever we have studied starting from March 23rd onward, i.e., everything that we have studied so far using the online platform. So we will go together one by one uh, through the lessons that we have studied so far, and then I'll try to highlight what are the main important ideas or the things that hopefully you should remember for your social studies or things that you can benefit from in your analysis of the society or in your life. Normally, I don't like to cover in exams everything that we have studied because some of the materials are just kind of supporting materials to make sure the big picture is there. But there are certain key ideas and key concepts that we want to make sure you remember it for your life or for your studies. So I will go through the materials that we covered together, and then one by one we will speak about what are the important points and what you should remember or know for your coming quiz or for the final two. Anything that we skip, it means it's something nice to know about. It fills the curriculum, but don't expect it to come in any quiz or assignment. So the first lesson was about assimilation. And in this lesson, we covered one video about assimilation. In this one, we reflected about the video and to answer the few questions, which is to identify 5 methods used to force assimilation. It's very important to know the different strategies that have been employed by different cultures or different societies to force assimilation into people. And I think in the video, most of you, when you answered, you were able to capture most of the points. And it's very important to be able to analyze the society now and try to find ways in which assimilation is actually being pushed onto people. If I play very quickly and maybe we can go through it, the video. I'm not sure if you will be able to see it here. I hope so. People have all. So let's see, what did we speak about? Cultures and how cultures they interact with each other. So in the beginning, everybody was, in their own territory, and they were fulfilled with whatever they had, and then different societies needed each other, and then when they needed each other, it means now some rules has to be applied on how one culture interacts with the other culture. And then it is in this context that at one point of time in history, assimilation started to show as one of the potentials of how one culture, strong culture, deals with another lower culture. And then we spoke about very briefly the residential schools, and then we had a short clip, and in this clip you've seen some examples of how the assimilation was forced. So these are the major ideas that you should know about. In which context assimilation started to happen? It's when the culture started to interact with each other, and then if there is imbalance in power between two cultures, then it's interesting to see how one culture will deal with the other people of a minority within itself. So this was there, and then if we look at the referenced article that was with it, then let's open assimilation lesson reference reading. Okay, so in this one is closed. Okay, 1 second. Why it was closed? Was this one? Let me share again and share the screen. Simulation. Okay, so this one, hope you see it now. So assimilation of cultural is the process. It's very important that you always know the definitions of these very important terms. So it's the process in which different culture groups become more and more alike. So this more and more, it means, it's a process that happens over a long period of time. You know what, let me just zoom in more so that it's clear what we are talking about, which portions of the document. So it's the definition of assimilation is very important. Uh, that assimilation is related to, minority, and in lots of cases, immigration. So it's like there is a context that happens between two cultures such that one of them started to absorb people and attract people from other cultures for various reasons. Of course, colonialism and wars, and different kinds of ways in which one dominant power somehow gains its strength over the other ones, and in ways it seems to appeal to people from one culture to immigrate to the other culture to gain some benefits, or sometimes it's forced immigration, as happened with the Black Americans. So, or sometimes by force with the indigenous people. So there is a dominant culture. So assimilation is in relation to, minority majority issues. Um, it doesn't necessarily always happen this way. Sometimes, let's say when you look at, for example, many immigrants who immigrated to Scandinavian countries or Canada, for example, it was not by force. It was by that the world has been organized in ways such that the economy in certain places are stronger, or what appears to be social services provided in one place better than the other places, it attracts people, but also there are, of course, economic gains. So it's not always by, the power difference between the two cultures is not necessarily always happening using strength. Then the theories of assimilation. It's important to know that assimilation is a linear process. So it takes time. So it's important to know this aspect about it. And it's very important to know how gradually the generations, one after the other one, they start to change. So normally the first generation children for those immigrants will grow up and socialize within a society that's different from that of their parents. So the first generation children, so you have to be careful when we speak about the first generation or the first generation children. So the first generation children is like the second generation for us. So these children, they see both their parents and the society. So normally they would maintain a lot of parts of their values and culture. But as time goes by, the third generation, which is the second generation grandchildren of the original immigrants, are less likely to maintain aspects of their grandparents' culture. And these are the ones who would become, these are the ones who are strongly, um, in risk of completely assimilating and being indistinguishable from the majority culture. So this is the first point about assimilation, that it's a linear process. It takes time, generation after the generation, first, second, third. The third are the ones who mostly would assimilate. The second point is that it's a process, will differ on basis of race, ethnicity, and we had this question, the Jeopardy and there are factors that affect of if people are much more prone to assimilate or not. And we said if people are oppressed, normally they would, mainly these people, they will congregate together and try to defend themselves or stand for each other. And in that process, they would maintain parts of their culture. Whereas the other ones who are wealthy and middle class are the ones who would assimilate the most or faster than the other ones. And yeah, this is the point. The assimilation process differ based on economic standing of the minority person or a group. So, and then because those who are economically marginalized, they're likely to be socially marginalized too from the mainstream society. And then, these guys can encourage each other and somehow keep together. But the middle class or the wealthy population will have access to homes, consumer goods and services, education resources, and thus they would assimilate much faster. Okay. How to measure assimilation? It's interesting, but it's something that you can maybe for your reference reading. It's not very important. How assimilation differs from acculturation. This is important to know the difference between the two. So they are used somehow interchangeably, but they mean different things. So they are not the same thing. Assimilation is the process of how different groups become increasingly similar to one another. So there is this linear process of moving towards similarity, melting, and in the melting pot. Whereas acculturation is just a process in which a person or a group from one culture comes to adopt practices and values of another culture while maintaining their own distinct culture. So for matters of convenience, for matters of survival, in the acculturation process, people would adapt certain parts of the other culture. And then there are examples about it. These are the important points. The rest is, is just for reference reading. Okay. Now let's go back to where we were. So this is the first lesson. The second one, it was about the boarding school, the much longer documentary. And for that one, it's enough that you looked at it and to be aware of what happened to the Indians during the residential school systems. You should just have general information about this. There is no particularities that you should memorize it. You should know about it. If you would be asked in an exam, it would be about something general about the whole theme of the story. Then debating assimilation. In this one, we looked at the points from the other side, from Mr. Come to our cultural assimilation debate with Mr. William Smith. And then William Smith, he tried to make the case that this is something from the past, narrating things from the past. That was the first argument. The second argument is that people have free will and they accepted our superior culture. So it's like he's playing on the free will part of, but this might apply to people from the wealthy or the middle class. But even for that one can argue, did they actually choose it because of their free will, or to which extent their free will is influenced by the the society that's constructed around them. And also many other examples, it's not by free will, it's actually by force. And then the third one is that we provide better education and welfare, and it's always questionable what are the criteria by which when we say it's a better education and welfare, what's the criteria to say something is better than the other, that one kind of education is better than another kind of education, and what's the focus of one's education? I mean, maybe the native uh, indigenous people, they had much more kind of scientific education, but they lived in harmony with the environment for years and years, and they were able to have medicine, and they were able to have survival skills, and they were able to build civilizations. And the Egyptians, thousands and thousands of years, they were able to have marvelous engineering part. So it's not sure what better means, but these are three you should be able to argue against these if you disagree with them. So this is about this part, and let's continue. And then we studied about Orientalism. And in this one, it's very important to know the definition about it. It's Orientalism is a Western way of looking at Eastern cultures in such a way that imagines or emphasizes or exaggerates and distorts differences of Eastern people and cultures as compared to that of European or American. It often involves seeing the Eastern culture as exotic, background, uncivilized, and dangerous. And it's very important to know that Edward Said, in his groundbreaking book, Orientalism, defined it as the acceptance in the West of the basic distinction between East and West as the starting point for elaborate theories. So it started in the academia from a Western perspective to set the stage for the average man and quote-unquote intellectuals of the Western people to develop their own theories and novels and social descriptions and political accounts concerning the East, but from a politically manipulated perspective that looks down upon the East. And the East, they need us to civilize them, to make them democratic places, and so let's go and do all kinds of miseries to them. And Orientalism actually happened in the 18th century and 19th century. This was the peak, 17th, 18th, 19th century. And during that time, the European power, just went and colonized almost Africa and different major parts of Asia in name of, the view that we are superior, we have better education, better way of life, and we'll go and educate them. They're savage and they just don't know how to run their own resources. And so Edward Said says it started during the period of European Enlightenment and colonization, and it provided rationalization. So to the average man in Europe, to convince the parents why they are sending their children in a army mission to go to Madagascar, and so it's like from France to Madagascar, such a remote place. How can you convince the average person to send their children to go to the deserts in Arabia or in Africa? Well, they tell them a noble narrative that your children are going there to educate these people, to colonize them and make them civil individuals and spread education and democracy and all of those things. And the population somehow, to a certain part, bought this narrative, and the other part is that we are superior and we are the dominance and will control the world, and it's a nationalistic view. So somehow there was a narrative supported by the Orientalism and Orientalists that convinced the politicians and the average people about the nobility of the mission that they are going to do, which was completely opposite to what they were doing. So it's in this context, which is the relationship between two cultures. This is different than assimilation. This is like suppression, and they're not trying to assimilate.
We will review together the topics that we have.
They're actually stealing their resources in the name of modernizing them or helping them. So in this video, we had an elaborate some short videos about Edward Said and his work and the definition and meaning of Orientalism and the role of Orientalists.
Think of Orientalism as a lens. Use it when you read the media. Spot the stereotype. Decode the fiction. Unlearn the myth.
Yeah, so this is what you should know. The role of Orientalism in that specific point of time. Okay, so this is good. And now, did I have something about it? No, that's it. Then the myth of the clash of civilization. I think you've seen the interview with Samuel, and also the elaborate talk of Edward Said. And then in the interview with Samuel Huntington, he somehow, you've seen his attitude towards
the topic that we will talk about today is about the myth, like sounding the alarm for the Western culture that exists, and then he tried to argue for the importance of facing the other organization and arranging the relationships in ways.
So Samuel is speaking that, we, the West, we're dying, we're getting weaker and weaker, and the Eastern people, because of their religion, which is, somehow another code for their culture. So the clash that's coming between is not based on politics or the different systems of governance. It's cultural, which is another code name for religious, and that's the clash of civilizations. Different civilizations will clash because of their differences in cultures, and that's where he brought, the cultural aspect into the map, and it was very much politically manipulated thesis, but it gained a lot of popularity at the time. We're speaking about the 1990s and early 2000, and it was laying the ground for huge political debate, and at the same time, soon after that, the wars that started to happen, occupying the Arabian Persian Gulf, and then the whole thing about Iraq, and then the war on Afghanistan and 9/11 and everything that happened after that. Because there are, and the famous statement by George Bush at the time, you are either with us or against us, and the crusade and all of those things. So the vocabulary of the politicians after this, the clash of civilizations was very much used to make excuse for lots of political and discourses and wars that happened. And Edward Said at that time, he gave that famous lecture that was there, and defending and see, pointing out all the weaknesses in this thesis. It's not based on any facts. It's actually very much politically motivated. So this was about the myth of clash civilizations, and I think I have put for you the a summary of the two articles. Let's open the first one and highlight some of the important points in it. So this is the first article. This is the thesis of Hinton. And Huntington, he has such a weird name. So it's very important to know that he argued, Hinton, what's his main thesis? It's very important to know. His thesis is that the most important distinctions among people are no longer ideological, political, or economic, they are cultural. And based on that, the whole war between cultures and civilizations started to become. And, I think, already made in bold the main points. We need a map, he said, that both portrays reality and simplifies reality in a way that this serves our purpose. So it's our purpose. We should reorganize the world in ways that best serve our purpose. And you don't have to remember the 8 categorization that he has. You don't have to remember who's under which category. You need to remember that it's based, he did his categorization based on cultures. And then following the explanations of the separate civilization, this is not very important. He's just, it's the main point. It's not anymore ideological. And that there is a shifting balance of, this is his second argument, that there is a shift. We are getting weaker and weaker, and they are getting stronger. And for us to fight back, we should, so is very slow. So the decline, the 3 characteristics of the Western decline. He says that there are 3 characteristics. This decline, this fading of power. So there is a shift in balance. We, the West, are becoming weaker and weaker, and our power is fading. But this process of us getting weaker has 3 characteristics. The first one is that it's a slow process, and it's possible to stop this slow process. And it's not in a straight line, so we can reverse it. This is how he convinces them to act now. So it's a slow process. Don't worry, we are not dying anytime soon. We can reverse this process. And how to reverse the power of a state is controlled and influenced by the behavior and decisions of the holding power. So all the politicians, you should somehow stand up together, and together we should make an alliance, or unify ourselves together to stop the process of decline. So it's just important to know maybe these points. Then the second point is that there are 3 distinct things that he gives to the West, which makes them special and separate from the others. First is their, to maintain the military superiority, and then promotion of political values, and then to restrict non-Western immigrants and refugees. Don't let the immigrants or refugees come into our countries. And a lot of these things, I'm sure you've heard it in the news and in different ways. The budgets to military should be huge and big year after year. we want to democratize our countries. Democracy, 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 and then immigrants don't let them in. And then, you know, the whole thing against Islam. So these are the main points in this article. The rest is something just for your general knowledge. We go back now. The response of Edward Said. Let's see if there are important parts. So for him, this is a clash of ignorance. Actually, this is not based on any facts or serious studies. This is politically manipulated theories by a specific group. So let's see more of the arguments. So the assumption that his perspective, which is to survey the entire world from a perch outside all of the attachments and hidden loyalty, is the correct one. So it's just, he's just making a theory and assuming it without any facts. And basically the other main idea of Edward Said that civilizations have never been in clash. Actually, there is no one civilization that's disconnected from the other ones. A civilization grows and becomes, you know, flourishes based on parts that are from within this civilization or culture, and many other parts that it borrows from other cultures. And it's like, you know, many rivers are coming together and just joining in one sea. So it's hard to say that this is only uniquely coming from one and only one culture. The human history is full of sharing of ideas and experiences in ways it's very difficult to say that which one is the exact root of a specific idea. So he argues a lot along these lines, but this is just for your reference. You don't need to memorize the key points that he has other than what I have mentioned. These are the main important points for you to know that, you know, the response exists and the main merits or points of that one. You guys have summarized it. Then we go to macro sociology and micro sociology and functionalism. So this is important for you to know. What's the difference between macro sociology and micro sociology?
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. It's very important to study society, cultures, laws, beliefs, and idea. Thank you for inviting me. Looks a complex subject. A macro level approach takes a large-scale perspective and focus on how the society is structured, what are the necessary functions, which social institutions fulfill these functions.
So you have to be able to distinguish the two approaches. What's the difference between a macro level view about society and a micro level view of society? And then based on this, you should be able to distinguish that functionalism is a macro level view of society. You look from top down, you organize the scene that you see in a society into different structures, entities, and study the relationships of each other. And this is a macro level approach. And we give example about the coronavirus.
Example, if we take an example of a pandemic, many people get sick and they are ordered to stay home or they flood the hospitals. Many of them will be asked to stay home in quarantine, and some of them they will lose their jobs, which affects the economy.
So it's
Then the government,
you know, it's what are the major entities in a society, how what one does affects the other one, what are the relationships between them. This is a macro level view. And we spoke about functionalism, and it's an example of a macro level theory.
we will look at the different social structures and how they are related to each other. Used to have one invisible student, now all of them are invisible.
All of you guys are invisible now.
Functionalism is linked to Emil Durkheim, who was a well-known sociologist who's famous for his views on the structure of society and analyzing it from a macro level. To start analyzing a society, first we look at its structure, which is divided into social facts and social institutions.
So he when he looks at this from a macro level to the different entities, anything in the society, whether it's complex or small, you call it a structure. And then he takes some of them and call them social facts, and the other ones social institutions.
Social facts are values, cultural norms, and social laws. And
so you should know that in functionalism there are social facts and social structures, and you should be able to give examples of social facts, and you should be able to give examples of social structures.
And religion and belief, social control.
And you should be able to give an example of how they are related to each other. The institutions, you know, schools, banks, police, marriage, economy, all of these things are social institutions. So,
education is a function, and the school is the institution.
So in this example, so we said functionalism is a macro level of view on society, but from where you start your inquiry, from where to start. And for them, the functionalists, you start questioning in your analysis with the question is, what is needed? So you look at the society and say, okay, what is needed? Then you say, okay, education is needed, food is needed, people need to sleep, you know, people need to, you know, wear clothing and things, very simple questions. Then you say, okay, that's good. So people need to eat. Who is the social institution responsible for this function, which is providing people with food? Then you say, okay, agriculture and farmers, and then you look at, okay, agriculture, and then what is needed for agriculture? Then you say a farmer, a land. Then now, okay, so farmer is now, farmers are social institution in relation to the land. And then, but families and people are social institution. Oh, okay, so the family social institution helps the farmers, you know, institution, which helps the agriculture. And this is how you start analyzing it.
Institution that provides this specific social function.
So you start what's needed, who provided the need, how they are related to each other. And you keep asking this question. What's needed, who should provide it, how they are related to each other. And then if something changes in one of them, how it influences the other one. And then you have a methodology now of understanding these societies.
When the institution manifests directly,
So these
work, order, all the structures.
This is very important. It's very important that functionalism is all about equilibrium, the state of balance that the society eventually always, based on their analysis, will come to a state of balance. No matter, people push each other, and at the end of the day, there will be effects, domino effect, and at the end, everything will be balanced.
They work together to maintain a social equilibrium. Any change in one of the social institutions will affect the other ones up until, in a domino effect, the society comes back to balance. Functionalism is criticized.
It's very important to know criticisms of each major theory that we talk about. So it's very important to know why functionalism, is wrong or can't be used to, fully analyze the society in ways that are correct. And the main one is that it has much less regard to individuals. The focus is on social institutions in a deterministic way. What does it mean? It means the individuals, they cannot change the structures of the society. The structures of the society impose on the individuals what they should do or how they should interact with each other. Why? Because we need balance at the end. That's what they say, the functionalist. We need things to balance at the end. So, and this is the failure of the model. It cannot model change, because some societies, okay, you're assuming everything will come to a balance at the end of the day. But many societies collapsed, many civilizations and cultures extinguished, and they just failed completely, which means something has changed and they were not able to adapt to the changes, and hence they just collapsed and failed. And functionalism can't. It just assumes, no, everything will be rosy at the end of the day.
Because it who don't have well.
Okay, so this is good about functionalism. And then now so we have functionalism. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is the article that I have shared. And now let me share the screen. Just each time I open a file, I have to change so that let's see if this one. Yes. Oh, why it's closed. Okay, so functionalism, what you should know this crazy guy, Emil Durkheim. You should know that he was behind it. What's the context? It's the end of the 18th, 19th century, and the whole thing that was happening in the world, and the rapid changes to life and to the society and the wars. And the main question in his mind was, how can we come to a state of equilibrium? How can the society functions amid all of these rapid continuous changes that are happening? So you should know the social institutions and the social facts. As I said, you should know that functionalism emphasizes social equilibrium. This you should know. If something happens, then eventually, if something happens to disrupt the order, eventually the society will keep adapting until at the end of the day, a state of balance will arrive. This is very important. Now, the whole idea of division of labor, mechanical and organic solidarity, you should know the difference between mechanical
and organic solidarity. This is very important. So in mechanical solidarity, the society integrates members who are somehow who have common values and beliefs. These common values and beliefs constitute a collective conscious, that's how we call it, that works internally in individual members to cause them to cooperate. Because the main question for him is why people accept each other and work with each other such that the society will be in state of balance. This is the main question that he keeps asking. And in mechanical solidarity, there are forces causing the members of the society to cooperate, and these are like, the molecules in the body, how they work out together so that they come up to he calls it solidarity, in which the different social structures and members of people within those social structures work together towards the point of equilibrium. So in mechanical solidarity, these people already have the common values. You can think about it, people from the same tribe, for example. This is a mechanical solidarity. All of them have the same common values and beliefs. Therefore, they would stick together and have a solidarity with each other. You can just look at it simply like this. Whereas in organic solidarity, these people are from different backgrounds. This is like, let's say, Canada, a place in which people are not from the same tribe. People are immigrants from different value systems and beliefs. But somehow they realize, to make things work out, we should make sure we provide services to each other to maintain balance at the end. And he calls this an organic solidarity, in which there is a greater division of labor. So in the first one, people in a tribe or of a similar mindset, they might have fewer ways of doing things, much less division of labor. So they could be all farmers or all hunters, for example. Whereas in organic solidarity, these people actually from different backgrounds and from different ways of thinking. So, and they serve different services and functions to the society. So there's much more division of work. But what keeps them together in solidarity is the common services that they provide to each other. The bakery needs the policeman needs the businessman, the businessman needs, the teacher, and all of that. They are different, they have different value systems, but they know they need each other. And for him, he calls it organic, because it's like, in the human body, how different organs, they cooperate together. They have, he used that example. I don't know the metaphor to which extent is actually correct when used with the human body. Okay, so this is the second point you should know about functionalism. So the first one is that social institutions and social facts, and that the society is always going towards equilibrium. The second one is the difference between mechanical and organic solidarity. And the third point you should know is some critique, as we already spoke about. Okay, so what else we have studied so far? Let's see. Functionalism, and then conflict theory. Okay, so conflict theory, Karl Marx. Let me open the file and share it. Okay. So you should know the guy behind it, Karl Marx, much crazier than the other guy. But mainly it's about conflict. There are classes, and wherever you go, look at the differences, and these differences will cause clashes, and people of one group, they should somehow congregate together and group together and put their strength and strengthen their bonds together and rise with a specific similar cause against the other. And if you look at anything, you should find some differences and use these differences as power conflicts, and then one will overcome the other one, and the cycle repeats. For example, if you look at the class, then you have the students who are sitting in front and students sitting in the back, and then maybe in the front they are more studious, in the back they are troublemakers. Eventually they will fight for each other, and then the ones in the back, they will take the seats of the ones in the front. Anything, search for a difference, use that difference to instigate a conflict of power, and then and then a conflict will happen, and one will defeat the other one. So you should know this. It's a conflict theory, searching for differences and finding ways to cause conflict between the two. The second one is that you should know the meaning of class consciousness and false consciousness. In class consciousness, people feel that the challenge is facing all of us together similarly, and we should be together against the others. Whereas in false consciousness, you think, no, it's my problem, it's just my manager, he's just rude to me, and it's a personal issue. This is false for him because it won't lead to conflict, and it won't lead to changing the status quo. Theories of classic classes, alienation, revolution, these are the two groups in this fight. One of them is the proletariat, which are the working class, and the other one is the bourgeoisie, who are the aristocracy or the wealthy people, and then they always manage the lands and manage the resources, and they just get richer and richer and more powerful. Whereas the working class, they just they only own their work. They're always discriminated and suppressed, and the worth of their work is being stolen from them, and then until when? Until they gather together and make a revolution. And for him, it's always like this, and it will always happen. And he predicted that the materialistic capitalism will actually eventually die and be defeated. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because materialistic capitalism was a little smarter than him, than he thought, and started to adapt and give certain, even falsely decorated benefits to the working class, such that it kept them as working class, but it just was giving them more incentives and ways to suppress them from feeling or reaching the consciousness of a class state. So you should know the criticisms to his theory. He said, everything is predictable. Exactly, this is how it will work. Step 1, step 2, step 3. No, it never happened like that. He neglected stability. This is where functionalism and conflict theory are, completely opposite. In functionalism, it promotes the status quo. The status quo will continue to happen. It will never change. Which is wrong, because many times it changes. And conflict theory too, it says always there will be conflict. Always the working class will eventually win, and they will become themselves a new bourgeoisie. No, sometimes it doesn't happen.
and sometimes some societies have stability for a longer period of time or less period of time. So you should know the other major criticism is that conflict theory focuses on conflict and promotes a materialistic world view only to life and to resources and benefits. Everything is materialistic. It assumes that people are predestined to conflict with no ability to spiritually overcome any greed or moral issues. For him, they were completely against religious beliefs. So this is about conflict theory. It's enough to know this part. What else we have studied so far? So we finished the conflict theory and functionalism. So we have the video. It's much more elaborate, and this will give you more details about functionalism and the other one, in which context they started, and the main points that each of them is giving.
Because this changes sometimes change people of that society into two categories: those who has these means of production and controls them, and the other people who don't have them, movement within the society. According to the conflict theory, the powerful, it will happen, but we've seen many societies that that theories they were in a very meticulous way, and therefore only limited number of people
about how each of them would look at one case study, like for example, why medical doctors they get much higher wages, for example, than other kind of workers, and how each of them analyzes it. And in conflict theory, it's interesting that everything has a positive role towards reaching the state of equilibrium. Even inequality or even crime itself is something that's modeled within the process of strengthening the stability of the society, because it creates jobs, and punishing people actually reinforces values and stuff. So this is about the major theories. And what else we have studied? I think that's it. Then we had the review. So it's important that you watch the Jeopardy again, because it has, and then the culture of quarantine. This is the, so I said this is assignment 3, but actually I'm reflecting more about it, and I think I will make it your culminating project. So we'll speak about it more. So it's possible that we keep, because it's such an important topic and at the same time very elaborate, and it's possible to come up with interesting ways of analyzing it. So maybe we will make it your culminating project for this semester and replace it with another. We'll speak about a few more interesting ideas. For example, we'll spend a few days talking about art, cultural art and sacred art, and we speak about Islamic art and other forms of art, and there will be one assignment about art. Then we speak about some political systems, and we'll have one assignment about developing your own political theory. And then so we might use this as assignments and this one as culminating project, but we'll speak more about it hopefully soon. So don't rush into into making it, and if we make it a culminating project, you will have chance to submit few drafts of it, and then I will review and give you feedback about them. Then the last lesson we had is about Japan, the Japan struggle to maintain its identity. I have marked your identity assignments. MashaAllah, you've done excellent job. And I think that parts of culture and identity you have alhamdulillah, to a very high degree grasped it and are able to express it in very interesting ways. So I think enough about the topic of identity. That's why Japan, this was just a case study for you to look at it, and it's enough that you submit the homework, but I won't bring it in the quiz. I think this covers everything we have studied so far, and I think there is enough material in this to for the quiz. Therefore, inshallah, although I have received a request that you guys are having lots of work this week, and therefore, if it is possible to postpone the quiz to another day, I think unless all of you guys write to me exactly the same message, I'm not going to postpone the quiz. We'll still have it on Wednesday, unless all of you guys, like 7 of you, completely booked and you want to move it to Friday or Monday, then I will accept this. But the default is, inshallah, on Wednesday, we will have the quiz. It will be multiple choice, and it will be based on whatever I have reviewed now. And hopefully, inshallah, you do well in it. So that's it from my side. Inshallah, you watch the video. We won't have a live session this week. This hopefully replaces it. And then, so hopefully this will be for Tuesday. Watch it on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, you will do your quiz. And then Thursday and Friday, I'll post a lesson for them. Inshallah, next Monday, we will have our live session again. Until then, inshallah, you be well and take care of yourself, enjoy your studies. Inshallah, speak to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.